Hello and a very warm welcome back to my YouTube channel. And today I want to talk about the real estate market in Mexico City. I'll give you 10 reasons why I think it could be a good place to put your money. I'll give you some major disadvantages and my conclusion at the end. So let's get straight to the 10 reasons. The first one is that if we take the Mexican peso, it has devalued a lot against major currencies over the last 10 years. So that would indicate it could be a good time to get in. So let's take the US dollar. Around 10 years ago, the US dollar would get you 11 and a half Mexican pesos. But now it actually gets you around 20. So there's been a really big appreciation. And this would indicate it's a good time to buy. Number two, I want to talk about the reasonable prices in Mexico City. So on average, in the city center, you're looking at around 3,000 US dollars per square meter. And I want to talk about yields as well. So on average, the gross yields are 5%. So reasonable prices, reasonable yields. But it also depends where you invest in Mexico City. So if we take the most upscale area, Polanco, it would seem a good place to put your money, but the prices are very high. So we're looking at near 5,000 US dollars per square meter, and the yields are not fantastic in general. They're about 3.5% to 4%. If we take another area in the Santa Fe, which is a major business district and has the Centro Santa Fe, which is the largest mall actually in Latin America, prices here are a lot lower, at around, on average, 2,500 to 3,000 US dollars per square meter. And the yields are actually better as well. So you could get easily around 6% to 6.5% gross yield. And I would say that's not bad. Number three, I always want to indicate how important population growth is. So population growth always indicates that there's going to be a higher demand for property, and that should increase property prices. Now, let's take Mexico City. In 2010, the population was 20,137,000 people. By 2020, this had grown to 21,919,000. But again, as I say, looking at the future is more important. And by 2035, the population is expected to grow to around 25.4 million. So that's pretty good for the real estate market. Number four, I want to talk about how there's not been a real housing market takeoff in Mexico. So if we take let's take the years 2009 to 2019. Now, in all of these years, in real terms, not nominal terms, so adjusted for inflation. So from 2009 to 2019, there's been no real growth of over 5%. Now, granted, there has been some good years of real growth. So if we take 2015, 2018, 2019, the real growth was above 4%. But we've not seen any double-digit growth in any of these years. Number five, I want to talk about the fact that Mexico City is driven chiefly by local buyers. Now, although 500,000 homes in Mexico are owned by USA citizens, again, I want to say it's still driven by local buyers, and in particular Mexico City. And why is that? Because the foreigners actually tend to buy on the coast, so they tend to buy in Playa del Carmen, Los Cabos, and Tulum, but much less in Mexico City. And that's always a good indicator when a place is driven chiefly by local buyers. Number six, I want to talk about the emerging middle class. So, are now around half of households, around 60 million households, are termed as middle class. Now, in the future, so if by 2030, this is expected to increase by a further 4 million, indicating that a lot more people are going into the middle class category in Mexico. And this surely will be good for property prices going forward. Number seven, again, very important, I want to talk about tourism in Mexico City. So if we look at international tourism, this has grown quite spectacularly from 1.8 million in 2010 to 3.7 million in 2019. So we can say double the number of tourists, although, of course, we've had the pandemic and these numbers have gone right down. Number eight, let's talk briefly about the economy. So the GDP growth from 2010 to 2018, it's not fantastic, but it's not bad. So it has been above 2% every year except 2013. Now, granted, in 2019 there was a slight decline in GDP even before the pandemic, and 2020, as with many countries, was a bad year. So the Mexican economy contracted by 8.5%, but it's still better than countries like the UK and Italy, which contracted by more. And if we look at the government debt, total government debt to GDP, it has been reasonably low at around 50%, although it has increased because of the pandemic. But the government policy has always been to try and keep this as low as possible. Number 9, let's talk about the low property taxes. So on average, you'll pay around 0.1% of the declared value of the assessed value of the property. So at the time of sale. So on average here, we're talking maybe around $100 to $200 a year. The range could be about $100 to $300 a year for property taxes. To be quite honest, that's pretty low. And also there's 0% inheritance tax. Now, number 10, finally, I want to talk about other good things about Mexico City. So Mexico City accounts for well over 20% of Mexico's GDP. There's quite good infrastructure in Mexico City, an excellent airport, I have to say. And also, Mexico itself, there's very few limits on where you can buy property. So you tend to have the same rights as locals, except, for example, there are restricted areas, let's say 100 kilometers from the border. Now, having given you 10 good reasons to buy, I want to give you some major disadvantages. Now, the first one is that, unfortunately, Mexico is pretty pro-tenant. So it can take a long time to evict a tenant for non-payment. And Mexico law also, unfortunately, does recognize rights of squatters. So be careful there as well. Number 2, I want to talk about taxes not being particularly low, in particular if you're a non-resident. So let's say rental income tax is 25% if you're a non-resident and there's no deductions. And let's look at capital gains tax as well. So if we look at capital gains tax, we're talking here, it's calculated you can have it in either two ways. So it's either going to be 25% of the total gross income from selling your total gross amount of selling your property, or 35% of the net gain minus expenses and let's say deductions. Now, I think here you have to look at both calculations and see which is best for you. Now, I think in this case, you should get an accountant. And as well, I think in Mexico, you should get an accountant, good lawyer, etc. It's really important for any purchase you make in any country, but I think in particular in Mexico, and looking at the capital gains tax. Number 3, I want to talk about the buy-sell fees are pretty high as well, so they can reach 15%. And a lot of this is taken up when you actually sell your property. Estate agent fees are quite high, and they can actually reach between 6 to 10% when you include the VAT. I also want to talk about average salaries in Mexico City. Now, they're also pretty low, between 600 to 650 US dollars a month net. The salaries are not particularly high, although I expect them to grow. At the moment, they're not high. And also the last thing as well, I want to talk about currency risk. Yes, I know it looks as though it's a good time to buy, but currency risk can still go the other way. So the Mexican peso could further weaken. In particular, if there's more problems with violence and cartels, etc., which again we know is another disadvantage. So, having said that, should you invest? My answer is this. I don't think Mexico City is the best place in the world to put your money. But let's say if you're an American, it could be a good place because it's easy to get to Mexico City. And I do still think Mexico City has good potential growth for the future. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Please do comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you very soon on the next video. Thanks and bye for today.